out on the 11th in our lecture series. So thank you. Yeah.
I would like to say that if you do volunteer to be a docent, you'll get one of these nice shirts like Dr. Barrett has on. It's a gift for being signing up to be a docent for the museum.
And a name tag. And we'll try to get you out to a trip on to the lighthouse, but no promises with it. So.
And it doesn't have to be all 4 days, but so you can kind of pick and choose your days, a 4-hour day, so it's not extremely stressful. And like Greg says, you're going to meet a lot of really nice people.
Have you introduced Dan?
I did.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Parker.
All right.
Well, and again, thank you all so very much.
This region for many years, so I'll let him give you a little more background on his background. Really glad that we have him working here at the South Jetty Newspaper.
Thanks, Cliff. I appreciate it. Can y'all hear me all right? All right. If I get too loud, just let me know. I want to thank Cliff and everybody else with the Preservation and Historical Association for asking me. I'm a big ham, so, it's fun for me. I also want to introduce my wife and technical advisor here. She's ducking now. Michelle Parker sitting at the... Michelle works as a teacher at the middle school, teaches English, but she was a news photographer for years and years before that. Okay, not that many years. You're not that old. I'm already in trouble. But yeah, she's really experienced, and she taught me a lot about news photography. Well, as Cliff said, and what this is going to be about is the history of the newspaper where I work and where I'm news editor. But it's also kind of a history of that part of Port Aransas history in which the newspaper existed. Going over some of the more significant events that have happened here in town over the last 48 years, and that's the age of the newspaper. And then just some of the funny things that we've covered too. That, of course, is the South Jetty Newspaper, 144 West Cotter Avenue. Real quick, just to sort of, for context, a little bit of personal history. I was born and raised here in Port Aransas. I was a part of the last class that couldn't go to high school here. There was no high school at the time, so I went off the island. I went to Aransas Pass High School, and that was so I graduated in 1979. Got a degree in journalism from the University of Texas, and then said, "Yep, hook 'em. Sorry, Aggies." Anyway, I went straight into newspaper journalism and never have worked in any other area since then. I started with the Killeen Daily Herald in Central Texas and went on to the San Luis Obispo Telegram-Tribune in California, then the Tulsa Tribune in Oklahoma, and then the Charleston Post and Courier in South Carolina. These are just gradually larger and larger daily newspapers. And then the Corpus Christi Caller-Times. I started there in 1994, and that's where I met Michelle. She was a news photographer there. I was a reporter, and got married and had a little boy. I became a stay-at-home dad for a few years, and then when he was old enough to go to school, then I decided to go back to the work. I didn't want to commute from Port Aransas to Corpus anymore for the Caller-Times. I asked Mary Judson if she might have a position open, and luckily enough she did, and I was lucky enough to get hired, and I've been there ever since. It's been 13 years now. Started off as a regular reporter, and now I'm news editor there, which means I'm in charge of sort of day-to-day news gathering. News gathering operation, the massive news gathering operation that we are. I supervise one reporter, 1.5, somewhere in there. That's my glasses clinking against the mic. But really, I mean, we're here to talk about the South Jetty. The South Jetty is a weekly community newspaper, as most of you guys know, and it's the only paper that is based right here in Port Aransas. It got started 48 years ago as a publication founded by two people, and one of them, I wonder if Susanna Reeder might be here tonight. No? Susanna was one of the founders of the South Jetty, and she still is right here in town. She and a guy named Steve Frischman, who no longer lives here, lives in Nevada, started it together. Neither one of them had any journalism experience, or if they did, it was very little. And today, it was just those two at the time. And today, the paper employs 11 people, and it's won, I'm going to brag, okay. It's won dozens and dozens of journalism awards at the regional, state, and national level. Has subscribers in nearly every state and also Canada. We still just operate out of this little old building, still wear shorts to work. My boss, Murray, he's known for, I think it has to be about 20 degrees before he gets out of the, or he has to go to a funeral. That's when he finally goes to pants. But in the years before the South Jetty got started in 1971, there were a smattering of newspapers over a period of decades, and none of them really lasted a long time. None of them was around for very long. But as I said, it was Steve Frischman, who was at the time 26 years old, and he was a graduate student at the University of Texas Marine Science Institute, which is, by the way, where my father spent his entire career as a research scientist. He and Susanna Reeder, who was a college student at the time studying business, decided to get it going. And they tell me that the reason they did it was they saw some important city issues that the populace just wasn't being. They didn't feel like the populace was being informed well enough of them, and they needed some sort of central publication that would inform people. When I called Frischman, or I emailed him recently to ask him a little bit more about the beginnings of the paper, go ahead and we got a shot of Steve. That's from back in the day, and also we got one of Susanna from back in the day, and yeah, go ahead and go to the next one. All right, so I asked Steve, where the name of the paper came up, because you'll see Tribunes, you'll see Couriers, you don't see another newspaper called the South Jetty. I said, where did you come up with that? And he said, I was in my lab at UTMSI on the ground floor looking out to the Gulf with the South Jetty in view. And my thought was to name the paper for the most stable and recognizable feature of Port Aransas. Not bad. That's right. It's stuck all these years. But the South Jetty's offices have been in a few different locations in Port Aransas. Let's go to the next one. Oh, wait, that's the very first issue that came out. Well, that's all right. That's all right. That's the very first issue, 1971. Before zoning, but it was being proposed. Don't you like the kind of the 1970s looking masthead? It was hand drawn. Okay, let's see if that other one is next. Yeah, okay. Anybody recognize the front of that building? That's La Playa. Yeah. There was no deck, and that's Steve Frischman walking in, and that was the office there. I was a junior high kid when this was about this time, and Steve went to what we, this is back before political correctness. We had the junior high band had what we called a slave sale to raise money. So each of us kids would stand up there, and all the parents or whoever in the audience would bid on us, and then they would, donate that money to jobs around yards and stuff. Well, Steve Frischman bought me for $50, and I had to stuff newspapers for a whole afternoon. Putting one section in another, hundreds and hundreds of them. So that was my first newspaper experience, right in that building. And to show you what a small town we are, my father, years after this, operated a chemical analysis business in that called Coastal Science Labs. So, it's a small town. Joan remembers that. It was the same building. I'm sorry if mercury is in your tacos. My father's gone now. You can't sue him. Man, I'm getting way off script. I knew I shouldn't have drunk that wine. So anyway, so first it's there on Beach Street, and then, let's see, it was moved. It was actually, the offices went to a little building that was pretty much across the street from where the Inferno restaurant is now, at the corner of Cotter and Allister. But then they decided to move the whole building. And by the way, that's Klein's Landing going up. Yeah, it looks just like that today, right? Keep feeding me jokes. So let's see, I'm going to try to catch up here. Let's see if I can find that here. It was a little earlier than 1980, I think. Well, anyway. All right. Moving on, let's see. Okay. Sorry. Well, anyway, go ahead, the next one. It was moved to the present location. That building was moved to the present location. And what? Yes, the same building, but it's been added on to. What was the what? Before we had it, I have to admit, I just am not sure what was in that building, to tell you the truth, before us. Some of the earliest issues here. Let's see here. Yeah, a lot of fish photos. Tend to do a lot of on the front page. We still do a lot of fish. Yeah, there's tarpon. We still put a lot of fish in, but it's usually not on the front page. What else do we have here? And that's like 1976, 74. Yes, there you go. Go ahead and go to the next one. I got a couple more. Hurricane seminars, a lot of dead fish. 38th deep sea roundup. Now we're at like number 75 or 80. I can't remember. Next. Okay, and we had just these funny, it was a funny paper. It was a little rough around the edges. I would like to publicly apologize to the owners and personnel of the Newport Inn for the incident which recently occurred. I am truly sorry and wish to say publicly that the food and the service definitely were not the worst I have ever had. Signed, Tom Corky Furlow. Like I said, it was funny. What else? What do you have next? The Farenthold murder. In case y'all don't know, we used to have a congressman until, a year or two ago. Lake Farenthold. Well, his father was murdered, and his body washed up here on the beach in the early 70s with concrete shoes, yeah. And they did end up arresting some guys, and it was pretty bad. But it was one of the big ones, that's going to produce some big news when, in a small town, some guy ends up like that. What else do we have next? Just sort of fun community news. The Clanton boys were a bit jealous that their sister had her name in the paper a while ago, so let it be known that Scott and Lee Clanton are both working at the ice plant this summer. How's that, fellas? It's the same ice plant basically across the street, by the way. The Clanton family operated that for years. What else do we have here? There's Murray, my boss Murray. So Murray and Mary are the owners. Murray and Mary Judson are the owners of the paper, and Murray got started at the Caller-Times as a photographer in the mid '60s. Yeah, that's right. And so he's been in papers pretty much just about his whole adult life. I think that guy next to him must be some sort of movie star or something. I don't know who. Is that Jan Michael Vincent? I don't know. All right. And that's Mary, when she was a little girl. Mary was born into a newspaper family, and that's really is a typewriter that was used in typing up news stories that her father operated, the Refugio County Press, and so she grew up with newspapers, and she's still in it. That is in Mary's office today. All of those typewriters, except for one, were used by her or her parents in producing, like I said, news stories for the papers they owned. They only owned one or two. Go ahead. That's Mary's father. His name was Cap Hinkle. He started his history with newspapers was that he started a newspaper in East Texas called the Tri-County Review, and that later became, and then he later became the news editor at what was then the Robstown Record, and then in the early '60s he became the editor and publisher of the Refugio County Press. Let's go to the next one. By the way, the reason he looked like his Cap was short for captain. He was in the Merchant Marine before he got into newspapers, so the name Cap kind of stuck. Go ahead. There's Cap there at the far left, and he's just posing for a picture with the elder George Bush when Bush was making his first run for statewide office. He was running for U.S. Senate against a Democrat, Ralph Yarborough. Yarborough won, but of course we all know what Mr. Bush went on to go to. Those other guys are other small town newspaper editors all gathered up in one office to talk to Bush. Cap retired from the Refugio County Press in 1976, but he wrote columns for the South Jetty for years after that, after his daughter Mary and son-in-law Murray bought the South Jetty. Mary, for her part, she studied journalism at the University of Texas and interned at the Caller-Times, where she met Murray. They got married in 1976. Isn't that weird? Those two got met at the Caller-Times as journalists, got married. That's what Michelle and I did. I don't know, it's weird. And so Mary and Murray were living in Refugio, and they were they were editor and publisher of the Refugio County Press after Mary's father. And then they struck a deal to buy the South Jetty from Steve Frischman. The Judsons had been visiting Port Aransas for years, and they owned a house here. Let's go to the next one. I think that's the house they owned. They were just sort of slowly building it. They did not have a ton of money, so they sold their house, and they pulled out all their savings and got a loan and bought the South Jetty. They've been the owners ever since. It's literally a mom-and-pop business. Mary and Murray are in there most days of the week. Mary oversees the news side of the operation. I do sort of day-to-day stuff. She does big picture stuff. Murray oversees the advertising and business end. Before the Judsons purchased the paper, the South Jetty was on average about 12 pages long each week, and the news was, a little bit sparse, it's funny, but not very substantial, like you saw with some of that stuff. The photos tended to lean toward, like I said, big fish stuff and scenic waterfront vistas, which is kind of fun and charming, but again, not that substantial. And Mary and Murray were professionals, and they really professionalized the whole thing. I should mention before Mary and Murray got here, there was one running column called Watering Hole, and it was purely just anecdotes from local bars. Again, it was a lot of fun. I remember reading that as a kid, and it would, the way it read, it would be like, saw Bill at Shorty's the other night. He was doing great. I'm like, who's Bill? There were no last names, and anyway, I was one of the writers for the South Jetty before Mary and Murray. I was a kid going to junior high here, and they had the school news. And instead of having a grown-up write about schools, they had one of the kids. So I like to teach. There he is, by Gay Roach and Dan Parker. That was like 1974. It was before that, I think. Anyway, I was like about 12. So I teased Mary and Murray that I was there before them. But, with their background in journalism, they really took a real professional approach to the newspaper's content and the design and the advertising. And the first issue printed by them, or that came out under their hand, was January 8th, 1981. And so it should be the next slide.
They got some new instruments and were enjoying playing music from the Sting. What year was the Sting?
Like 1975.
That would be later.
1974. Okay, yeah, so that's the first, started looking a little bit different anyway. Over the years, this is going to sound like brown-nosing, but I mean it. I mean, they have poured their hearts and souls into that paper and really almost never taking vacations and really building it up, constantly reinvesting in the paper, making it better and better. And it's a fun place to work, too. I mean, they've done a good job of keeping the atmosphere good and the mood light. What do we got next? They, for years, they sponsored a Halloween costume contest for the whole, there they are back, I think this is in the 1980s, this shot. Same location as today. Them and their dog. What do we got next? Oh, I got to say real quick, while we're talking about Mary and Murray, that's Mary's brother, who's named Kim Hinkle, and he is one of the original screenwriters of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And just off the frame there is a severed head. Now, he really is. He and Toby Hooper, whose name you might recognize, were the original screenwriters of that very first really scary movie, of that chain of movies. Oh, yeah, Last Night at the Alamo. Yeah, he's done a number of things, Kim has. He's an accomplished film guy. Go ahead. There's Mary, back in the day, with her reporter's notebook and what looks like a vintage Macintosh. What's next? I don't remember. Yeah. Murray out in front with his camera. Murray's always been the photographer. I mean, for quite a while, especially during the oil bust years of the 80s, the late 80s, sometimes I think it was just those two. That's it. They're putting out the whole paper by themselves. What's next? Oh, yeah, I was about to mention that they always put on this, the South Jetty each year would put on this Halloween costume contest for the whole community. And the South Jetty employees got in on it, and this is from the 80s, this shot. And also, go ahead and go to the next one. Pretty much every year the Cub Scouts come into the office, they still do, on a field trip, and we show them how we do what we do. Those kids are all grown now. Working at a community newspaper, it doesn't just represent a job. It's really kind of a lifestyle. You write about everything from meetings of the local VFW post to maybe an unsolved murder in town. You just put in a ton of hours, middle of the night hours, weird hours, covering all kinds of crazy things, and you really have to be devoted to it. Over the years, the South Jetty is, like I mentioned, weathered the oil bust of the 1980s. Hurricane Harvey's strike last year, or a couple years ago, year and a half ago, which I will talk a little bit more about in a bit. And we've always survived, and we've never missed 1 week of publishing the paper in those 48 years. To explain some of those difficult circumstances, I got to say, first I have to tell you that South Jetty does not have its own printing press, like right here in town. We always have had other presses do it for us, and let me see, we have had them at, for instance, when it was being published in, where was it? Port Lavaca for a while. It was being printed at that newspaper's printing press. We had a period of really incredible rains, and it was so flooded that our delivery guy couldn't get from here to Victoria because the roads were flooded. So we rented a boat, and we took it to, let's see, this was in 2002, by the way. We took it up to one of the coastal communities around there. I don't think it was Port Lavaca, but it was not far from there, and boated them on back. Go ahead. There it is. That's our delivery guy at the time, Leslie Willie, who's a longtime resident. Some of y'all recognize his name. Getting off the boat with a bunch of papers. That was right. We chartered it in Rockport and took it to Port O'Connor, and then took them back to Rockport. Then we were able to get back in the vehicle, and I guess that photo was shot in Rockport. We've had a lot of modernization over the years. Go ahead. We used to use photo typesetting equipment, which was messy and smelly and expensive. But now we use, like everybody else, a desktop publishing system. It's clean, far more economical. However, the newsprint cost of newsprint is constantly going up. And 1 year, not too long ago, the cost of printing doubled in 1 year. So that's a problem we continue to contend with. So we've printed in Port Lavaca. We've been printed by the Victoria Advocate over there in Victoria. We got printed for a while, a period of years, by an offshoot of the Victoria Advocate called Ad Graphics, and now at the Caller Times. Caller Times does a good job, I think, for us, but our poor delivery guys have to drive all the way over there and load up their truck and then come on back. We work really hard. There's a carload of papers by one of our delivery people. We keep piecing. The way it works with a weekly paper is you piece the paper together gradually all week long, keep putting it together day by day, and then we get really busy toward the end of the week. We finish most of the writing and the photography each Monday. We put together a few pages of that week's paper that day, Monday, but most of the pages are composed on Tuesday morning. By the way, I'm going to go straight from this right back to the office and finish up, and then we're going to get going again real early in the morning and finish up. Then we put, all the pages are composed on computer screens, as you might guess, and we use a program called InDesign. And one of our people puts all the pages on a web-based portal that the presses at the Caller Times have access to. And then those presses usually print somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,500 copies of that edition. And our delivery drivers pick up the paper, like I said, driving back to Port Aransas. We also have our own web page, as most of y'all probably have seen, and our own Facebook page and Twitter account. Got to try to keep up, man. We try to keep those the Facebook page as updated as we can, but with our small staff, it's kind of tough sometimes. Obviously over the years we had to compete with TV, cable TV, satellite TV, video games, the internet. A lot of papers, and especially daily papers, have suffered over the years, and you've seen them close. You've seen huge cutbacks. They get smaller and skinnier. We're a little bit lucky, weekly papers haven't been hit quite as hard. It's partly because of hyper-local focus. We're lucky also here in this town. We've got a pretty thriving economy that kind of translates to advertisers, and we like to think that we do a good job, and maybe that also will drive a certain amount of subscriptions. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. We're a strong part of the community. Yeah, that's our web page. And that's our Facebook page. And speaking of the community, just sort of an overall view there. You can see our marina. I think this was shot before the hurricane. But We act as a sponsor of community events and organizations such as we sponsor Art Center receptions, Sandfest sculpting, Little League teams. I mean, I could go on and on. I could never name all the stuff Mary and Murray do to support the community. Mary, for decades, has run something called Candidates Night, which will be coming up soon. And it's a forum, a voter education forum in which the candidates in contested city races, city council, school board, whatever, come and sit in a room, council chambers usually, and they field questions from Mary on the issues of the day. And then we publish stories afterward for anybody who didn't show up to watch it, or we've even live streamed it in recent years. We will run a story about what the candidates had to say in the very next edition. So it's something Mary does every year, and I think it's a real service to the community. We have a total circulation of 3,089, and believe it or not, Port Aransas has only maybe 4,000 people living in it. So how do we do that? It's because, like I said, we have subscribers in all these states, people who are down here for only part of the year, or they used to live here and they still have a real abiding interest in the place. And we also, again, like to think maybe we're doing a decent job and a lot of people want to subscribe. Go ahead, let's go. Yeah, that's the Candidates Night that Mary puts on, and that was this is shot back like in the 80s, before City Hall was where it is now. Or before the council chambers is where it is now. Go ahead. That's the visitor's guide we put out 4 times a year. There's Mary in her office. And who else do we have? Well, could we go back to Mary? So she's editor-publisher. She handles the big picture stuff. She deals with everything from employee insurance to writing editorials, laying out the editorial pages, lots of other just stuff. And then next one is Murray, and I'm just going to sort of go down the line of how you wear all these hats, these different hats if you work at a small paper like ours. Murray is the publisher and CEO. He oversees the business and advertising side. He shoots photos. He lays out most of the pages of the paper each week. The next one is Zach Perkins, who covers the Port Aransas Independent School District and police. He worked at the Rockport Pilot before the South Jetty. And he also bartended for a while before that, which is good training for working at a newspaper in Port Aransas. I'm like, Zach, bring me a Cosmopolitan. No, more like a beer. And I'm news editor. Everybody works hard, except me. No, they work me so hard I fall asleep at my desk. I have to have that pillow ready at all times. I'm in charge of day-to-day news gathering. I cover Port Aransas City Hall. I shoot photos, and I also lay out the front page every week with Mary and Murray also consulting on that. Next one is Vivian Carlson, who is in charge of classified ads. She writes up community news and helps us put pages together each week. We have Diane Null, who she's the one on the left. She's a long-time bookkeeper. She's worked at the South Jetty for 40 years. She's commuted from Refugio to do it every day. Mary and Diane actually grew up together. They were little school classmates, known each other since childhood. Next is, by the way, the cat was named Travis. He's one of 2 cats who were very popular characters at the South Jetty. Yeah. Okay, and Kelly Hardig there, she's one of our newer faces. She's a circulation director, and she helps lay out pages each week. And next is Elizabeth Weaver, who's in charge of, there's the other cat, Trixie. She even smiled when I told her to. Elizabeth is in charge of display advertising, and she's been with the paper about 13 years. And next is Keith Petrus, who is our advertising director, and he not only sells ads, but also creates them and helps us lay out pages. And on the side, Keith is the publisher of a magazine on geocaching. Next is that's Shirley Ull, is her last name, Ull, U-H-L, is how it's spelled. And she's one of our delivery people, and her husband is Brent, Oh, nope, that's Tony. We'll get to, okay. There's Brent. They are married and they have 2 Nissans and they load them up with papers every week. And it's not just, go ahead and go to Tony there. It's not just, us full-time people there. It's also, the whole community that puts together a community newspaper, and Tony Amos was one of them. Most of y'all know Tony. Well, you know what? Raise your hand if you knew Tony or knew of him. More than half, it looks like, but not everybody. So I'll say real quick, Tony spent, he came here in the late 1970s, and he was with the Marine Science Institute for many years. He established what is now known as the Amos, but now it's called the Amos Rehabilitation Keep. It was the Animal Rehabilitation Keep. He established that. He's done so many things I can't even begin to list them all. But he was kind of an iconic guy. I always have said that if you wanted to create a scientist who would really appeal to people in a lab, it would be Tony, with the big white beard and the British accent and charming manner. Rescuing sea turtles, dolphins, all kinds of birds, everything. That's right, any time of day or night. And Tony was my next door neighbor for 40 years, right next door to me. I'd hear that truck starting up in the middle of the night, and I knew what was going to happen. He was on his way to go pick up some animal. Tony wrote Island Observer, a column on just sort of his general, just stuff he did, for 35 to 40 years. Our most popular column for sure, and Tony unfortunately passed away from cancer right after Harvey. A terrible time for the town. This is a 1-2 punch. Anyway, there he is, rescuing a dolphin there at the beach. We have all kinds of other people who contribute to the paper. We have a pastor's pen column that rotates between different ministers here in town. We have the education notes column. I'm not sure what we have next here. Oh, let's just hold it there for a second. That rotates between different employees of the school district, teachers, administrators. Every week there's a different one writing that, and so all kinds of columns from all kinds of people in the community. And you might say, well, Port Aransas is a small town. Do you really have that much news to report? And the answer is yeah. It's a dynamic little town, as you know, and we always have so much going on. It's really hard to keep up with. We cover City Hall. Here's the City Council. Some members of the City Council here in a recent shot, including Joan Holt at far right, who's sitting right over here. Yeah. And my apologies if any other council members are here. I don't know. Anyway, Rick Pratt's a former council member. We also cover schools. Every year we try to get kind of a creative shot when it comes time for graduation. And one year, one of our stringer photographers, we call them stringers because they're not full-time staffers, but they, sort of part-time, they'll shoot for us. And Marnie Pate shot this. She's a good photographer, and it was her idea, I think, to get this. Did a good job. We try to get something that's really Port Aransas-y kind of graduation shot. And I should say, our photographers who are not full-time staffers are another really valued part of our paper. But continuing with what we cover police. We cover the police. We cover the Coast Guard. I was out on the South Jetty shooting a Coast Guard rescue, and look at these guys. They're still like, yeah, whatever. Keep on fishing. Some poor guys, their boat had crashed on the end of the South Jetty, and some guy had a messed up leg, and they're rescuing him, and everybody's like, yeah, great. Wait, I got a bite. So we cover the Coast Guard. We cover the University of Texas Marine Science Institute. We cover the ferry system and other things that the Texas Department of Transportation is involved in here in town, like just, highway construction and things like that. We even have a Homeland Security office here in town, and that guy's name is Ashley Fenton, a local here. He actually retired from that position as commander of that a year or two ago. And this is just everything I just mentioned. That's just the government side of things. There are a lot of other aspects to a town to cover, including just the people. This kid's name was Cody. Cody Angel. He was a real good guitarist when he was in high school, and we did a profile on him. Michelle shot this photo too. Great shot. And he's still playing, by the way. But I mean, we try to do profiles on all kinds of people we can't, especially the longtime residents. Go ahead and go to the next one. There's Marianne Monroe, who was Rick's mother-in-law, passed away about a year or so ago. We did a story about her experiences as a nurse during World War II, an Army nurse. And Rick, was she an officer? Yes. Yeah, she was really interesting and made a really great story. We cover community organizations like Port Aransas Preservation Historical Association. We also cover like another organization, Port Aransas Community Theater. This is when they put on Shrek a few years ago. We cover tourism. Can you believe that? I was standing, anybody want to guess where I was standing when I shot that? I was like the 8th floor of the dunes, that's right. And I just pointed a long lens down the beach. And now it was crowded. It was a 4th of July weekend, and it was massive. There were a lot of people here. But the truth is, it's not quite as packed as it looks because I was shooting with a long lens, and that tends to compress distances. But it still was pretty crowded. That was like maybe 4 years ago, maybe 5. Yeah. Be glad you come in the winter, Texans. I've always said, man, if I didn't live here, I'd be the winter. I'd be here in the winter. Who needs 98 degrees and 90% humidity, man? And this. No, it's fun no matter what time of year. What else do we cover? We cover business. There's La Playa again. We cover business on all kinds of aspects of business. What's that? Oh, one of our stringer photographers, Ron Farmer, who shot that photo. Yay, there he is back there. Ron shoots all kinds of stuff for us, and we appreciate it. What else do we have? We cover development, whether you like it or not. This is a house going up at Palmilla that I shot. What else? We cover the Whooping Crane Festival. There are all kinds of festivals all year long, and this is one of them. This guy was straight from China. He was giving a talk on cranes in China, and this person dressed as a whooping crane just walks up to him, "Oh, I love you." We put it on the front page, too. What else? We cover spring break. We cover all the big holiday weekends on the beach. This was an award-winning shot by Zach Perkins. Zach was on a ride-along with the police and during spring break because we knew there would be action. We didn't know it was going to be like this kind of action. This kid was fighting with another kid, and right after this officer wrestled this guy to the ground, the kid slipped loose and ran into the dunes, and then he was chased and then dragged back out, taken to jail. A lot of drunkenness, sometimes kind of frightening. We cover what else? We cover other festivals like Sandfest. Pretty cool, huh? Coming up real soon, right? What else? We cover the mini fishing tournaments. Big old El Dorado dolphin there. These photos, I want to mention, every one of these photos is shot by a South Jetty staffer. All the 98% of the photos in this whole slideshow is shot by some South Jetty staffer. It's not stuff I just pulled off the internet. Well, the next big old red snapper. Doesn't even look real, does it? But they were big. We don't Photoshop that stuff. What else? We cover beach issues. Much more. We write about Port Aransas history from time to time. You guys know? I know that Rick knows. FDR, yeah. Right. The only president ever to have visited Port Aransas waters. So FDR sitting there with Barney Farley pulling the fish up, right? And Ted Matthews, yeah, in the back there. And Ted Matthews' relatives are still all over town here. Let's see, what else? We covered breaking news. That was the biggest fire in Port Aransas history, as best as we can tell. That was at the private marina here in town somewhere around 8 years ago. I'll tell you, I was laying in bed about 3 blocks from this at 3 a.m. and I get a call from a firefighter saying, "If you want to see a big fire, you better get out of bed." Yeah. Well, at first I walk out of my bedroom, which was totally dark and just all nice and cool and everything, and I open the door, and then the next room is just glowing orange. And I look out the window, oh my God. So I just grabbed my camera, and I'm like 2 blocks away. I just started running. But Michelle was working for the Caller-Times at the time, and somebody had to stay home with the baby. So she let me run and shoot, but we shared some photos with the Caller-Times, and maybe you shot some a little later? From the porch. I owe her. Yeah, Caller-Times is mad. Whatever. They're our competitor. I got this shot in the Ship Channel one day. So my point being that we cover nature also, environment. Yeah. And what else do we cover? We cover... Yeah, let them get a load of the dolphins for a little while. They were jumping just ahead of a boat. I cropped out the boat. Zero in on the action. Yeah. Joan, what is it? A great egret. Joan. Uh-oh. We have an expert for everything in this room. I don't know what kind of fish it is. I was at the South Jetty, the rock structure, not the office, when I shot this. Okay, go ahead. And we cover issues like golf carts. That was at the corner of 361 and Access Road 1A. No deaths. We cover leisure and just fun stuff because, you gotta, as a newspaper, you need to reflect your community, write about and photograph what's happening. That's a kid named Arthur Pecor, who is a freshman. I think he's a freshman in high school right now here. He's a good surfer, too. We got a lot of good surfers around here. And I shot that. I got and his younger brother, Fee, is really good, too. Yeah. What else? VLCCs. Yes, we cover shipping and just anything channel related. This is one of the big ships that has been coming through lately and has got the whole town talking. This was shot with a drone. A 16-year-old kid shot this for us with a drone. Yeah. And we covered Harvey. We got a Harvey. Harvey's going to keep me writing about Harvey for the next few years, probably. Very sad, but it's a huge deal, and we got to keep writing about it and keeping people up on what's happening. This was in the immediate aftermath when Murray, my boss, went up in a helicopter right like 2 days afterward, the very first chance he could. What else do we have? We cover, again, events, Mardi Gras parade. These two were cruising along in a golf cart when I got this shot from a few years ago. We've got Mardi Gras parade coming up real soon. Fishing, just general fun at the beach. What else? School sports. That kid's getting some elevation, isn't he? I shot that in the Port Aransas gym, in the high school gym several years ago, playing against Woodsboro. Do we still have the beach dash each year? I can't remember. Well, it seems like it kind of fell by the wayside, but we did for a while. What else? There's a shot at the skate park. Kids on bicycles, which are illegal there. Mishaps. Only in Port Aransas. The guy facing us is former Mayor Claude Brown, who operated that crane, and the guy who's back to us is Bobby Sherwood, the constable. I don't know who the diver is. That guy Chance, maybe? Okay. What else? Oh, just whatever we could find. I was at St. Joe one day and I saw these little, what kind of crabs are these, Joan? Well, anyway, I turned and just got real close to him and got a shot. What else? You never know where a cool photo is going to happen. Now I remember why I have all the... I was segueing from all the different kinds of things we covered to just the photography into things, and these are just some of the photos that have run. This is at the dog park. This dog was just chasing a ball, and I got down on my hands and knees and got a shot. All right, that's okay. You can go on. Let me see. When one of these things comes through, this is, a big offshore rig that was built at one of the yards, maybe Ingleside, and it was on its way out to the Gulf of Mexico. That's Roberts Point Park there, next to the marina. And so it's passing between the ferry landings right now. You see that? That's when just one rig was parked up and there. Now there's another three. Anyway, so we got in a plane with it was Mark Creighton, who's such a great guy, and give us rides on his plane sometimes. And just circled it and shot some shots. What else? We go to the beach all the time and shoot photos just looking for whatever might happen. And I remember seeing this little girl and her little sister playing, and I shot probably 50 or 60 photos of them playing down by the water. And then I walk over to their parents to tell them who I am and why I'm taking pictures of their children. And, hopefully get, some names and just something to put in a caption. And then I hear this screaming behind me, and I turn, and this little girl's running toward us with that starfish, just overjoyed, and I spin and shot, and bam. That ended up being the best shot I got the whole time. And we put that on the cover of the visitor's guide. We put it on the front page of the paper. It just couldn't have happened more perfectly, and you just never know when shots like that are going to happen. Go ahead. Yeah. One day I looked out the window and it was like a great sunset happening, and I got to find, you can't, sort of our rule, we're not going to just take a picture of a sunset. There's got to be something, some focal point. And so I found these guys fishing at, I guess it was Roberts Point Park, and got lucky. This is during one of our storm swells, and I went out there with a waterproof camera and got a shot of Carson Einkoff, who is the daughter of Susanna Reeder, one of the founders of the South Jetty. See, it's a small town. He's on a stand-up paddleboard. Got the paddle. So, what did I say? Daughter? Oh, geez. Duh. Yeah, son of Susanna Reeder. And you never know when a cool photo is going to happen. This is just at a band practice in the high school, and I saw this kid, and I framed it so that he was on the other side of another tuba sitting next to him during a band practice. And I was only able to squeeze off like 3 photos before he looks at me and starts doing like this. Stop. But got lucky and got something. Go ahead. Terrible things. We have to cover the terrible things too. That was an awful wreck on 361, and that helicopter's about to land to pick up the injured. I'd much rather be taking pictures of poodles at the dog park, believe me. More old papers. Oh, well, okay, I remember what I was going to bring up here. Some of the bigger stories we've done in the past. That was when the Ixtoc oil spill happened in 1979. For those of y'all don't know or don't remember it, it was a blowout in the Gulf of Campeche, and hundreds of miles from here, but the oil got here. And I still remember being an 18-year-old surfer and walking through that black muck. Still going to surf no matter what. But anyway, it was pretty terrible. It made national news. There was also the shrimp boat blockade of 1989. State or federal government, I can't remember, started requiring turtle excluder devices. It was the feds. Started requiring turtle excluder devices, also known as TEDs, in shrimpers' nets, which would, keep turtles from being as likely to be caught up and killed, and also would keep what's known as bycatch from being just stuff other than shrimp, scooped up by the hundreds, the thousands, and killed. Well, shrimpers really hated that idea because they also lost a lot of shrimp through that hole. So in protest, they lined up their shrimp boats side by side all the way across the channel, blocked it. How long did it last, Rick? Was it like a day? Okay, all right. Pretty major disruption to marine traffic. Made a great picture, though. And the TEDs did not go away, by the way. Now, are they still used today? They're still in use today. So what else we got? This was the arrival of the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria replicas built in Spain and donated or somehow transferred to the city of Corpus Christi. And so this is when they're first arriving, coming in through our ship channel. That's Roberts Point Park there. And on their way to Corpus Christi. I think only one of those still survived. This was just in the late 80s. But they kind of fell apart. They weren't well taken care of. And two of them just kind of went away. And another one's still sitting there in their marina over there. Yeah. It's kind of sad. Every once in a while, a really big, crazy crime rears its head here. This was, let me see, it was the late 1990s. Is that what it says up there? There's a guy named Harrison Preston III was mad about getting arrested over at what now is Bernie's, but at the time was called Sharky's. Sharky's had a few different locations in town, but that was one of... Anyway, he got mad because he was arrested for disorderly kind of stuff, and a while later he went back to the building and set fire to it. And then he took his rental car. It only slightly damaged the building. He took his rental car off to Charlie's pasture and set it on fire, luring firefighters and police to the scene. Then he shot a cop. And then a Winter Texan who was driving a car that looked a lot like a police car, unfortunately for him, he got shot. The officer and the innocent bystander survived, and Mr. Harrison ran off into deep into Charlie's pasture as he could, and for the next 18 hours exchanged shots with police until finally a DPS helicopter until a SWAT team moved in one of those SWAT vehicles, and he killed himself. But moments later he was filled with SWAT. The SWAT team led too, so for a while nobody knew who killed who. But anyway, yeah, it was awful. But every once in a while, you know how it is. I mean, these things pop up, and we have to cover that too. What else we had? We had the riot that actually, there were conflicting reports. And now that was what year? Let me see. This is on the beach during the Joan Jett was doing a concert, and let me see, 1988, and it was a spring break. What we quoted the then city manager, Gordon Beck, as saying there was an incident that had the potential to be a riot, but was not in fact a riot. However, the New York Times reported that, and other news organizations quoted other people as saying it was a riot. Well, sounds like shades of gray to me, but yeah. Was it a riot or was it a melee? Merely a melee. It was a big party with a few injuries. No, apparently what happened was a car hit a 16-year-old girl, left the scene, then came back, then was surrounded by angry spring breakers who pushed the car over on its roof, set it on fire. The guy escaped. The police took him away. The police came back. They start getting pelted with bottles, and they fire tear gas. They break up the crowd. Crowd was estimated at 500 to 600 people, with 50 to 60 people directly involved. Also, you can see, as part of that same crazy week, a car ran off the ferry landing and 2 people drowned or died. I don't know what killed them, but they died. So yeah, That's why part of the reason you have like 3 sets of traffic directors now. It's not just one guy. And also they've changed the construction of that whole approach now to where it would be real hard to just go flying along in the middle of the night and go right off the ramp. You'd probably hit something first. Moving along. I hope this isn't taking too long, you guys. That was the Bullwinkle rig, which at the time was the tallest man-made structure in the world at 17. This is what I have from my notes. 1,736 feet high. 1989. And then continuing. I'm sorry? Yeah, it sits up on the once they get it out to the right site, then they set it up and it stands on its legs. That's the front page we ran when the marina, we had the private marina fire. Another one of those big stories. What else? That was one of the biggest announcements for any kind of development in town ever. Just a few years ago, when Cinnamon Shore announced a $1 billion plan that will extend over a period of something like 15 years to build 1,000 units along the island road, all told. So when Hurricane Harvey hit, we were not able to use our normal office. So what we first we're like everybody else in a way. I mean, we had to pack up our families and get out before the hurricane too. But the whole time we were constantly in contact with the city and the National Weather Service, and others, updating us on things. We were constantly updating the website, and we made all of our stories free from that point on, keep the public informed on what was going on. That continued from before the hurricane, during the hurricane, and then after the hurricane, it continued for quite a while. Well, after the hurricane, we couldn't go back to our office. Nobody could go back to the office, but not much. And so we established a new office on North Padre. Mary and Murray rented a condo. And so we just bring our computers in there and do all our reporting, we base all our operations there. Drive into Port Aransas every day, take pictures, interview people all over town, go back to North Padre, put out the paper. And that went on for, I think, a couple of months that we were in there. It was weird, kind of surreal to be putting out a newspaper from a condo. But lucky that we were able to do it. What else? What do we have next here? Oh, a quick little story I got to tell you. I decided one year to do a story about office cats because you go to stores and stuff around town. There'll be a cat that lives in the store. So I decided I'd do a story about these different cats and the photos of all the different cats. And I decided I would make it as if Trixie, our office cat, wrote the story, and that was the photo that ran with it. We took the glasses off a little teddy bear. We tried to put a press card around her neck, but it didn't really work anyway. So we did a whole page on it. Anyway, we entered that in the Texas Press Association's Better Newspaper contest, and they got second place for features. And then when the certificate from the Texas Press Association came in, my name wasn't on it. Trixie Trout. And that's still framed in our office. She's named Trout, by the way, because we found her at Trout Street begging for shrimp when she was a kitten. Anyway, what else do we have? We put out an April Fool's edition one year. You can see what that was all about. Some people didn't quite catch on either. They called us up and said, "The Titanic really in the Gulf of Mexico? I don't believe it. And look at the size of that trout. And I can't believe we might have football in Port Aransas." Mary and I keep saying to ourselves, we ought to do that sometime. But yeah, we haven't done it but one time. What else? Yeah, we win awards, so I got to brag about that. There we are. Thank you. South Texas Press Association, the Gulf Coast Press Association, the National Newspaper Association, the Texas Press Association, Associated Press Managing Editors. Anyway, go on. Oh, there's some more. Oh, there's more awards. Go on. And more. All right. Well, that's about it. You know, that was at Sandfest, by the way, and we sponsor sand sculptors. And anyway, you know, that really is about it. But if you guys had any questions, I don't mind answering them. We're back to the very beginning. Anybody? Thank you. I saw a hand up over there, or were you just like saying, get out, go?
No, I want to thank the South Jetty. Living in Minnesota, getting the electronic version, felt like I knew what was going on here during the hurricane. You guys put out notices like every hour, sometimes a day.
Mm-hmm. Good.
The ferry not working, the ferry was working, getting gas, we're getting gas.
Mm-hmm.
All of that was very interesting.
Yeah, thanks. We appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate it, and I'll pass that along. And we know, we know that hundreds of people, well, not just the people who live here full time, but people who are winter Texans, were really concerned, and so we were just trying to keep that information flowing as much as possible. And we have people like Chief Scott Burrows there to thank too for continuing the flow of information to us. He's back there in the back. Anybody else have something you want to ask about newspaper production or anything like that? Yes?
Which story affected you the most?
You mean ever in my career, or... Oh, is that Lee? Hi. Man. It's so hard. I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years, and you would think something would stand out, but, it just kind of becomes a blur. I could name a few things. Oh, Bob Hope, you remember that? Well, that was really, I was starstruck. When in California, working for the San Luis Obispo paper, Bob Hope at the time was 80 years old. He was still going strong and doing shows just sort of wherever. And he was going to do a show in our county at one point, something called the Mid-State Fair, which sounds like some little, FHA thing or something. It attracted thousands of people. And so the guy sitting next to me in the office was going to try to get an interview on the phone with Bob Hope before his show, a few days before, so we could get it in the paper in advance of it. And he couldn't quite make it where, he kept missing him, or he just couldn't make their schedules coincide to get a phone interview. And he finally had to do other things, and he just blew it off. He said, I can't do it. I said, can I try? He goes, yeah, go ahead. So he gives me a phone number for Bob Hope's agent, and I call, and he goes, so you want to talk to Bob, huh? And I said, yeah, because I thought, I'm going to have to schedule something, right? I didn't have any questions ready or anything. And he goes, I said, when can I do that? He goes, how about right now? Oh. And there's a pause, and then there's this voice on the line saying, hi, this is Bob Hope. I just couldn't believe it. My voice was probably quivering. It was not cool at all. But, he was real nice and gave me all the time I wanted, and I asked him different questions, and at one point I made some stupid joke. He goes, that's funny. Bob Hope said I said something funny. I will never forget that, ever. Brag about it for the rest of my life. He was a really great guy. Yeah. My wife's a lot younger than I am. Anyway, no, but that was a really great thing. You have really great, cool things like that happen to you, and then you have these horrible, horrific, I covered crime quite a bit at other papers, a lot of just death and misery, and then, having to deal with all that. It was horrible. I covered a plane crash that killed 40-something people in California, and that was, it does things to you, but it sure does make you appreciate life more, I'll tell you that. Here in Port Aransas, I think this thing that strikes me about reporting in Port Aransas is, it reminds me of the episode of the Brady Bunch where the middle brother is decides he's going to be a reporter, and so he just goes around the house interviewing his brothers and sisters. And I feel like, it's just kind of one big family somehow, and not quite like that, but it's close. And so I don't know. It's a funny animal but we are big enough so that the truth is I don't even know half the people in town. I can guarantee you I do not know 2,000 people by name. So it is not quite like reporting on your family. But you care so much about the town. I was born and raised here. I thought that I was really trying hard and trying to be diligent, and I think I was at these other cities where I worked. But then I got here, and I'm like, man, if I mess up this story, I'm going to have to bump into the police chief at the IGA, and he's going to kill me. No, that's a bad example. No, just anybody. I mean, so I'm always having to talk to the chief, but there might just anybody who, when I was working for the Tulsa Tribune, as a city of 750,000 people, I might interview a guy, I may never see him again. Very likely I wouldn't see him again if he wasn't somebody who's like a routinely interviewed person, like a city council member, a police chief. This is just a guy, And here, pretty good chance I am going to run into you again. I better get it right. I better do it right. And it really keeps me on my toes. So that's about all I can think of. Anybody else? Well, I want to thank Cliff and whoop. Hey, Scott. Mm-hmm. And that was in here initially. Mm-hmm. Canada's night was really a big deal. Mm-hmm. She really put on quite a show. Yeah. And Canada's night was the place where all the politicians in the coast have been. Mm-hmm. Show up. Mm-hmm. Carry on for Canada's night. So yeah. Yeah. Well, and in those days, and thanks, Scott, appreciate that. I'll pass that along to Mary. In those days, of course, we didn't have the communications and everything on the web, the World Wide Web, and so it just wasn't as easy to it wasn't as easy to find out what was going on. You kind of had to show up. You need to show up at these things, or either that or read the South Jetty afterward, or you really, unless you went directly to the candidate and talked to him, you were not going to know who that candidate was and what he was all about. And sometimes candidate night was people's sole exposure to this candidate. Today they can put out a Facebook page and and that kind of thing. But we still think that candidates night is pretty important, and we do still attract a crowd. We pose important questions to these people, and hopefully it results in it being a more informed electorate.
I can personally say it's very tough.
Joan is a city council member. That's right. Mary will ask tough questions, and then she'll gavel you down if you go too long, if you go more than the allotted 3 minutes. Mary, I know I bragged some about Mary and Murray, but they really are great bosses and great members of the community, and they've just done a ton for the community through the South Jetty and other ways. All right, I have a feeling I'm keeping people away from their wine and beer. One more. Frank? Is that Frank? Thank you, Frank. And thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Let's get one more round of applause for all the volunteers that serve the food and wine. And thank you all for your participation. Hope to see you next week. If you didn't sign in, there's still one chance on your way out.